On January 17, 1920, the United States federal government made the sale, production, importation, and transportation of alcoholic beverages illegal. Because of this, Americans' lives were changed dramatically. Not only did citizens' lives change, but the country and the countries around it did as well. The places that perhaps were most affected by Prohibition were the border towns of the U.S., Canada, and Mexico. Patrick G. Poulin and his family owned a wine house on the border of Canada during this time. There, he and his family experienced Prohibition on the international border firsthand. Ever since the birth of the United States, a great portion of the population has opposed the uses of alcohol. Although these people have always maintained strong beliefs, the temperance movement didn't pick up steam until the late 19th century. Organizations such as the Prohibition Party, the Women's Christian Temperance Union, and the Anti-Saloon League helped bring the temperance movement to the forefront of American political issues. By 1920, the temperance movement had fulfilled their goal, and the U.S. had established a federal ban on alcohol through the 18th Amendment. With the establishment of this law, a total of 1,520 federal agents were given the task to enforce it. Unfortunately, Prohibition proved to be extremely tough to enforce, and organized crime rose dramatically during this time. Criminal organizations such as the Chicago Outfit and the American Mafia rose to power extremely fast and took advantage of the exceptionally high demands on alcohol. They bought their alcohol from distilleries and breweries in other countries such as Canada and Mexico and sold it illegally in private bars called speakeasies. Because of all the bootlegging that went on during Prohibition, distilleries and breweries in Canada, Mexico, and the Caribbean saw great profits. As time went on, Prohibition was becoming more and more of a lost hope for temperance Americans. The power of organized crime rose, more federal agents were succumbing to bribery, and the majority of Americans were still drinking alcohol. The noble experiment was a complete disaster. By 1933, the 18th Amendment had been repealed and alcohol was legal once again.
The decisive vote of the 36th state against Prohibition is happy news for the grain raisers of the United States and for many others throughout the land. With an eye on December 5th, work is being rushed in distilleries and bottling works.
Patrick G. Poulin experienced Prohibition firsthand at his family's line house located in Jackman, Maine. Although he was very young, he can still recall certain aspects of the line house as well as stories he has heard in later years. In the beginning, the line house was just another section of the Maine Canadian deep woods. There was no international border marker, and the U.S. Customs House at the time was 10 miles away. In the very early 20th century, Pat's father and his brother took interest in the land.
How the line became about was that my dad and his brother went up on the line on the border and then staked out a piece of land, and they just marked it off and went to the government and said, well, we want to build there, and they said, fine, as long as you build, you can have the land, because it was, it's going back now to a long time ago.
The two brothers ended up constructing a house that split the international border completely. Half was in the U.S., the other in Canada. The bottom of the house consisted of a restaurant and a bar where the two brothers conducted their own family business. The top served as Patrick and his family's house. During the years of Prohibition, the line house served as a hotspot for the locals because it was one of the only places that still sold alcohol. People from all over came to the line house to drink and have a good time. Lucky for Patrick and his family, the bar was on the Canadian side of the house, therefore his family was still technically able to sell alcohol. Because all the breweries and distilleries were shut down in the United States, Patrick's father had to turn to Canada to receive his alcohol. Every week, Patrick and his mother would cross the border to buy liquor for the family business. Not only was the line house a bar and restaurant, but it also served as the local liquor store. People from the community came to buy liquor at the line and smuggle it across the border. The majority of smugglers did not get caught.
Okay, because it was a small community and everybody knew everybody. Yeah. So, if I knew you were smuggling a little booze for yourself, chances are I'd let it go by.
Because the town of Jackman was so small, there were hardly any federal officials around to police the alcohol as well as the surrounding area. This caused the line house to be a rough place at times where full-grown men would get drunk and become violent. The bouncers at the line house, which are most of Patrick's uncles at the time, served as the peacemakers. With all these activities going on, it was especially hard on Patrick and the rest of his siblings. As youngsters, they saw and experienced things most kids don't witness until later on in their lives. While most of the boys rolled with the punches and sometimes worked at the bar, the girls had a different experience of what the Linehouse was. They saw the bar as a scary place and weren't even allowed to go near it. With the combination of Prohibition ending in 1933 and the recession, the profits that Patrick's father once made were no longer there. In 1940, Patrick's father sold the Linehouse and moved back to Jackson Center. Although Prohibition was an embarrassing and miserable experiment for the United States, almost the entire population was somehow affected by the law. It just so happens that for Patrick and his family, Prohibition was their livelihood. 81 years later, Prohibition is still a major chapter in Patrick's life, and without it, his life would have been very different.